I'm gonna tell all my grandkids I read like a 4.1.
Absolutely.
That's Darren's story.
I tell them all the time, Matt. I say, look, man, they had to bring out some fire extinguishers when I was running. They had to bring them out.
Hey, Unc Woodson was up there with a hand watch and got him at 4.29. So he's telling everybody.
I'm trying to tell y'all. Perfect. I'm trying to tell you.
Yeah, See, that didn't work too well for my comeback from what Darren was saying.
Yeah. Well, hey, now we can see more of that game room you got there. That's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, how's everybody doing, man?
Are you doing well? This quarantine stuff is not anything new to us. Like talking about off season wise, like you're kind of quarantine for a couple of months where you just trying to get that time in with your family after a season. So, it's it ain't that bad. It's the tough thing is getting homeschool kind of figured out.
Wow.
I got a 4-year-old and a 7-year-old.
Oh, much respect for those teachers, right?
The 4-year-old, bro, they have like zero. It's like definitely herding cats, with them.
Oh my gosh,
they have no attention span, and
at
the same time, I'm like, why am I paying this much for private school?
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm like, all right, what's 1 + 1? I don't know. What do y'all do at school? Color?
Yeah, I've got a 3-year-old, so I hear what you're saying. And my wife's a 2nd grade teacher, and I can tell you they don't pay them enough. That's for sure.
Yeah.
This morning, Tiff, because she's got school with the older two, and then the twins. They just kind of like do puzzles and she tries to hold their attention as much as she can. But no, I'm on a conference call this morning, and I'm not kidding you. It sounded like they had one of those big mallets that they see at the carnival when you hit the thing for the bell that goes up, right? It sounded like one of those was taking it to the wall for 30 minutes straight. And Gia's on like a Zoom call with her class, and Luca's got a project, and I'm like, so that's 2 tiny humans making that much noise while the other ones are trying to go to school. Like, I don't know how you do it. I really don't.
So how are y'all passing? Like, what's the restrictions in Chicago as far as getting out of the house? And
so they're actually kind of lenient. They should have been more strict in how they announced it. Like the governor basically said, you guys stay inside, but you can walk your dog or you can go around the block or just stay away from people or whatever.
Right.
So people are like, well, I can go out to, Chicago. Yeah. If you get it, basically, and actually it snowed today, by the way.
Oh my God.
I saw that.
The other day it was like 75, and then it snowed today. It's stupid. But if the sun comes out, people are all over the place. I'm like, we're going to be quarantined forever if y'all don't.
For real.
Stay
but
inside.
I did see, Matt, some pictures. There's a picture of a wild coyote on Michigan Avenue, which is like 4 blocks from his house. Like literally he's right there. Did you see that picture? Like no cars, nobody in the middle of the day.
And I was like, wait, how did this photographer even get this? Like, did he like let him out of the cage? Like,
yeah, I know.
It was a perfect shot right on Michigan Avenue. Coyote crossing the street.
I mean, like I Am Legend status, right? Like I felt like there was a lion was going to jump behind a car and start hunting that thing.
We did take a ride in the car. Like last week, we just took the kids out and just rode down Michigan Avenue, which was like weird because everything's boarded up because you don't want people looting it and stuff.
Right.
And it's like blank. And then we went down Lakeshore, went by the stadium, and then went down Lakeshore. And all kind of people were like at this park at one point. And I was like, people playing tennis. I'm like, what are y'all doing? Like, this is not like
they're more than 6 feet apart.
That's crazy.
But we're 6 feet apart with rackets, so we're good.
Yeah, exactly. Did you see the picture of the guy at Walmart? He had those pool noodles taped to his head. And so
Walmart pictures are the best.
Oh
I
man,
saw a chick with a goggles on and a snorkel.
Oh
and
yeah,
like, it don't work like that.
I've seen.
It doesn't work like that.
Well, when this whole first thing started, there was a guy in Italy that had a big, I think it was plywood. It was just a big circle. And he cut out the middle and put like little overalls on. And so he's walking around looking like Saturn on the streets of Italy.
It's like you can't get close to him.
Yeah, exactly.
Crazy, man. All right, well, we'll jump into this, man. We'll get going. I know dinner time's coming up, so we'll try to get you out of here. We think probably hour and 15 minutes or so. Just kind of talk through your story. If we got to go longer, great. If you got to jump off, man, we'll wrap it up. But
Okay.
again, man, excited about sharing your story. So we're gonna get rolling here in just a sec.
Gotcha.
Yeah, we've been recording.
We're ready. We're waiting on you, man. We've been
We're gonna have to edit that out.
Yeah,
now.
no,
We've been
we don't.
recording
We
this whole
don't need to edit it out because we can start it
not
here.
see
This
that
can
we
be.
push
No,
record?
I know that. All right. Anyways, we're here on the Darren Woodson podcast with Matt Forte. Man, lucky enough to have played alongside you and gotten to know you over the years. And on the Darren Woodson podcast, we want people to be real and transparent and talk about their journey and the struggles and the obstacles that they had to overcome and your story. Knowing it, I think is going to be incredible for listeners to hear and to be able to relate to you. And, they've watched you on the field for so long. But then now to understand what you're doing off the field and the impact that you're making in Chicago and South Side of Chicago specifically. But then also the stuff that you've done down in your home state of Louisiana. Thank you, man, for joining us and spending some time with us. And first and foremost, I think the question that everybody wants to ask you first is, why was number 44 your favorite fullback?
Oh my God.
That's a lot.
Hey, Matt, please tell us the truth. This dude walks around.
Of course, man. Everybody wants to. This is the dying question, of course, right? So,
yeah, everybody has to know the answer. So
at one point, he was one of the last of the Mohicans as we talk about fullbacks in the league at this point. Because everybody was going to the spread offense, running out of the gun and doing all this. And who was that? Coach Mike Martz came in.
Mike Martz, yeah.
He uses a fullback. And so we had Tyler come in, one of the greatest starts to the season ever. He came in, didn't do training camp with us, comes in, and I'm like, who's this white dude? They're bringing it to the running back group. And I'm like, oh, yeah, he's going to be a blocker. White dude, fullback, yeah.
Yeah.
Thick neck, real slow.
Every stereotype, he ticked them off.
So I'm thinking, hard worker, high motor.
team firster.
He just sacrificed his body.
Just student of the game. Just love.
Dad was a coach, all the cliche sayings. But no, he came in, didn't do camp with us, and it was kind of weird because me and Tyler just vibed immediately because he was an older guy, and we had some younger guys in the running back room, but we were just so sarcastic to them all the time, putting them through rookie stuff. And it was like, man, this is my buddy, man. Because I was the oldest in the running back room at that time. But my rookie year, I'm the youngest, by far. We had guys 6, 7, 8 years in that was playing running back, and then I came in. But so Tyler comes in, and we vibed immediately. But also the first game,
yeah,
we go through all the camp, and Coach Martz, he calls this play during the game that I don't even think we ran it in camp. And he was one of those coaches where you got to know your playbook because he'll just call a play in the middle of the game or a formation. It's we've never ran this for.
And I've been through 3 practices, by the way, at this point.
Yeah.
How many plays did you have to sit there and tell Tyler, hey, you're going left, you're going right here?
So this was the ultimate one. He called this play, and I'm thinking to myself, all right, I'm getting lined up at the same time. And Tyler, we break the huddle. First he asked Jay, he's like, yo, where do I line up? And typical Jay, Jay's the guy.
Jay
You
Cutler,
don't know the
right?
plays.
Okay.
I'm not helping you. You got to know your stuff. You got to know where to line up, whatever.
Oh, man.
And so he's like, yo, Jay, where do I go? And he turns around and looks at him. And it just turns around and gets on the stage.
He shook me off.
Wow.
Hey,
He gave you the save yourself look. Save yourself.
But so then Tyler obviously turns to me and he's like, Matt, we got the screen. I'm thinking to myself, man, we do. We never ran the screen out of I, out of 12 personnel. What are we doing? So I say, just offset to the right and run a wheel. And the play ends up, we run a screen against Atlanta. I get the ball, and it was perfect because he took the front side linebacker out of the play.
Over the top. Yeah.
But then by him blocking him, and I set up the blocks perfectly.
Of course you did.
Yeah, you did the play perfect, of course.
So by him blocking him, he actually blocked 2 people on that play, and it ended up being a 56-yard touchdown. It was a turning point in the first half of the game too.
Yeah, it was crazy because true story. I had no idea what he was, and you're like, run a bullet that way. That was like the terminology that Mark used. He goes, hey, run a bullet that way, and you just posted some on social media not that long ago of those screens on like how to run a screen. And I remember going back, like thinking about it, and my memory of me is like, oh yeah, I went out there and I blocked a bunch of dudes. Well, I watched that when you posted it. Hey, running, yo, I looked so lost.
You did take a peek.
I did a full 360 in the middle of the field, trying to figure out where I was. But I got in the way of two guys, so it worked out. It was
he
good.
did a full 360, like randomly. You were supposed to run the bullets route. He ran like, I don't know if I'm really supposed to be out here. Let me take a look back. Oh, okay, people are coming. Let me turn around.
You know those
somebody's way.
Everybody has those plays that you think, man, I did not want to watch that play on Monday. That was one of your plays.
Well, and the problem was, as Matt said, like the media comes after the game, and they're like, hey, you've only been in this playbook, and Mike Martz, is notoriously has a complicated offense, and how did you guys put this much together, and you were so involved? I was like, 22 told me just run that way, and he put me in
22
position.
Can run the ball a little bit.
It was like, that's exactly how we drew it up.
Yeah, that's right. And funny enough is he did put that play in the next couple of weeks, as we had that where I ran like a wheel route on that screen, and that was like
clutch,
a secondary.
Go run a 360. Try to block.
He goes, instead of getting in the way, just keep running.
So Matt, let's go back, man, and we want to hear your story and your journey. So let's go back to your childhood.
Slidell, Louisiana.
Slidell, Louisiana. Yeah, tell us a little bit more about your background. Give us some color to how you were raised and your family members and whatnot.
Yeah, I come from a big family as far as my mom's side of the family. She was one of 12. My dad is from Texas, Texarkana, Texas, and he's one of 3. So my mom's side of the family, being in Louisiana, growing up there, I had tons of cousins and uncles and everybody. And growing up in a small town like Slidell I think it's just, kind of a perfect place for me to grow up as a kid, because everybody's neighbors know each other, and you got tons of kids in the neighborhood, and you're always playing pickup games of, everything. I swear it's so much different. Like now I'm raising my kids, and I'm like, I would never let y'all go outside on y'all's bike alone, let alone all day long. Like I would leave and come back right before the street light comes on, like everybody.
Yeah, that was the rule.
And so I grew up, like that. But as well as with dad, my dad is a preacher's kid, and my grandfather was a pastor in Texas for 60 years. And so growing up under him, and he brought that kind of discipline, but also the wisdom with him as far as like coaching and fatherhood as well. So having 2 great parents is the ultimate blessing in my life, and was able to just to help me to go in the right direction in life. There's some people who obviously don't have the luxury of having both parents, or don't have the luxury of being raised, with a father as a role model. But I had that luxury, and the way I live my life now is kind of how I want to thank them, and also thank God for giving me those parents. But being in Slidell, like I said, a small town, I got one older brother, and his name's Brian, and he's 2 years older than me. But I think me being the younger brother and him being the older brother helped me to always strive to do better, because my brother was very talented, very athletically gifted, and all of that too. So I would always want to hang out with his friends, the older kids, and compete against them. And so that's where the competitiveness and that nature, I think, was born out of me.
From a work ethic standpoint, what were you like as a kid? Did you take time to appreciate the process? Were you always wanting to play the game? I mean, what was your mindset as a kid as far as the work ethic goes?
So my dad instilled that into me too. Like he was a college football player as well, played at Tulane, same place I played. And he would always tell me, he's like, son, like, listen to me, because I've already been where you're trying to go. Like, I've played this game. I know what you're trying to do. So listen to me. And he would always tell me, no matter how hard you think you're working, there's somebody who's either working just as hard or maybe even harder than you. And so when I used to think about that as a kid, it always went to my mind, like, I don't want to ever be outworked. That's the worst thing you can do, is to be unprepared and then be outworked, because that's all on you. Mm-hmm. Your preparation is on you, and then if you get outworked, that's just physically you get dominated. That means you didn't do enough work. Mm-hmm. And so I've always took that to heart, even from when I first started playing at 7. We're in Little League, and my very first play of a padded practice, I get ran over. And my dad's looking over, he stands up, he's looking over me because I stayed on the ground, and I had one of them little tears coming out like, I didn't like that. And my dad, this is typical, like football fatherhood teaching right here. He looks over me. He's like, he ain't picked me up. He was like, "You all right?" And I said, "Yeah." And he's like, "Well, that's football, son." And I was like, "You know what?" And so I said, "You know what?" I got up. I said, "Let's do it again." So we did the tackling drill with the dummies. One kid on each side.
The Oklahoma drill? And, was it like the Oklahoma drill back then?
We had this discussion a couple of days ago. What did you guys call it in Louisiana? Was it the Louisiana drill? What'd y'all call it?
The Louisiana?
Nah, so we basically, there's nothing special about it. It's just a tackling drill. No special name.
Y'all talking about it's just football, man.
Let me get you something cool and special right now, but no, it was just a tackling drill. Like, we're all about fundamentals. How to tackle correctly, stay healthy. Yeah. All
right, so Matt, so you started football early. Did you play any other sports early on, or was it like football? That's it. That's all I'm going to focus on.
I played baseball, basketball, and I played soccer for a little bit too. And as I continued to play, I kind of just, like, when I got into high school is when I weaned them off. Mm-hmm. Because like football was obviously my first love. Like, my dad will tell you, I used to sit down and him being from Texas, he was a Cowboys fan.
Yeah.
And so he would watch Cowboy games.
Yeah.
You shouldn't have said that, Matt. Come on now.
Yeah, he's no longer a Cowboys fan. I don't know what happened. Somehow he became a Bears fan.
I was a Bears
fan.
He was for some reason.
Somebody his son started getting paid. That's what it was.
He was tired of seeing 28 get burned every play.
No, he would tell me, like, I've never seen a 3 or 4 year old sit down and watch an entire football game and just be, sit there and be quiet and watch the game. So I just love the sport ever since day one. And, but also just being involved in every single sport. That was the luxury of being in Louisiana and being down there. Baseball, all-star baseball, travel teams with basketball and all of that. It was, tons of fun. So I was definitely involved in all kinds of sports.
Nice. Okay, so you get into high school. I mean, early age, you just said football, that's what you knew you wanted to pursue. But how do you feel like the other sports helped you progress in football to the level that you did?
Yeah, I think it helped in the fact that they're different, but also have the same, some of the same similarities of having to work together, teamwork, and those type of things, and kind of taking the same work ethic towards it, and knowing the difference. Like when I was in basketball, I didn't really sometimes bring the same work ethic that I did towards football, and it would show. And I was like, well, that kind of made it click that if you really want something and to be great or to continue to improve and continue to level up in your athletic ability on a certain sport or something, you really got to dive into that and work at it. It's not just going to happen because you want it to happen. And so by, being in basketball, and it was funny, in high school, I played my freshman year, and the whole time playing basketball, I'm just thinking about football at the same time too. So I'm like, all right, I'm playing basketball, but I still got to lift weights after practice because I don't want to lose my strength, but that's tearing my shot up like big time. So I come, try to lift weights either before practice or after or something. I come in, I'm airballing the ball, all kind of stuff.
So your game is the same today as it was in high school then?
No, my game's pretty sweet now. I'm close to retirement, bro. Like, I ain't gonna lie. Ask Josh McCown. Josh McCown is a big time basketball
Hey, he's a
guy.
baller. He's a baller for sure.
Baller. He told me from the words of his mouth, he was like, "You one of the few football players / running backs, because usually you get running backs on the court and it's all bad because we're trying to run over people and all kind of stuff." He was like, "You one of the few running backs I've seen that can hoop."
That's funny. He told me the exact same thing, so I don't know how credible. I don't know how credible that is.
Matt, I'm curious.
All right, Pistol Pete over here.
Matt, I'm always curious with athletes, and we were all athletes, but I'm just curious with you talk about the work ethic and wanting to be better, and you're talking about it in the context of the sports you played, which is obvious. I mean, that makes sense. But were there any other interests outside? Why did sports become the avenue that you chose? I'm going to work super hard at this particular avenue as opposed to, music or art or whatever else it could have been.
Yeah, I think it was just like the first thing that piqued my interest as a young kid. And it was like for some reason, when it did, it was like the only thing I wanted to do besides, playing with your friends and having fun and doing like that type of stuff. Like, I valued education in school and stuff, but I never really was challenged, stuff kind of in school, you'd work at understanding it and whatever, but I wouldn't go above and beyond that, like, and read extra books or read ahead in chapters. I was just like, I'm making enough good grades to continue to play sports. That's the avenue that, I want to do. And so, it just appealed to me, that, and even spiritually too, like my dad is a preacher's kid, and me being in church and going to Sunday school and this different stuff. I didn't really understand it at the time, but I knew God had a plan for me, but also that he gave me an ability, and it's not just to run a football up and down the field. And when I'm finished and my life is over, for it to say, all right, he was a pretty good running back, but for me to use that as a stepping stone for different conversations with other people and to do what I'm doing now, even.
Yeah.
So,
do you think it was the end result of the success that you saw on the field, or did you actually truly enjoy the weightlifting, the running, the film watching? I'm curious where your mindset took you when you thought, this is fun, this is awesome. Did it take you to the game and the end result, or did it take you to the process of getting there?
So in any process, there comes a point where the love for that thing gets challenged. And that's where you make that decision where I think I want to keep doing this, or this ain't for me. And when I was growing up, it's definitely, you love every part of it, but equally you love the success part of it, because, okay, I put in this work, I get the success at the end. It's like, that's what the mindset is. Yep. And then at a certain point, it gets challenged. And I think for me, it was in high school when, I'm killing it in high school and all that stuff, and I'm being recruited, but I'm not getting any scholarship offers. So I'm like, where's the success in that part? Okay, I'm putting in the work, but where's the rest of it? And so that's where things change for you. It's like, are you really gonna love it if you're working very hard and you're not getting the same respect out of it? And I think my whole career has kind of been that way. When you look down the road, and we'll get into that later. At one point in high school, I went to LSU's camp, and their high school camp, you thinking like, all right, let me just go to the high school camp. Maybe I get noticed by the coaches. Their camp is like training camp. Like, it was crazy. Like, nobody could have ever prepared you for this. Like, you go in and like literally, like, you're running sprints, you're doing drill after drill. Like, people were so like, guys didn't come back the next day that. And I remember this one coach. It was one of the coaches. I can't remember his name, but he was one of the LSU coaches. And it was at the heat of the day. It was like 90-something degrees out there. We working in, and they got all these high school kids. They're like, yeah, we're gonna run them into the ground. So they running us into the ground. And then this one coach, he was like, we're gonna test that love today. We're gonna test that love today. And when he said that, I'm like, that makes sense, because you gotta love it to be out here.
Yeah, that's right.
Because if not, what are you doing it for?
That's right.
Yeah. And that day, and like ever since then, like when we were doing the rest of the camp and stuff, when they blow the whistle, for a water break, I'd be like the only one. I'm running to get the water. I run over there. Like, I was never one of the guys walking or whatever. And like, even though I didn't even get noticed by them or get our scholarship offer, that helped me going forward. Is like, I'm going to take every practice like this, every opportunity in a game I get like this, because you never know when, the next time is going to come.
So that's right. So did that create a chip, knowing that you weren't getting recruited by some of the schools? Let me ask you this first. Was LSU one of the schools that you wanted to go to?
Oh, that was my goal. Is if you had it in my mind in high school, is, all right, I'm going to get a scholarship, I'm going to play for LSU, and then I'm going to the league. That's it. Yeah. Plain and simple, like that. Yep. But then also, being there, I knew there was an SEC, so I was like, I think I went to a Nike camp that was at Texas A&M, and I was looking at their facility being there. I was like, well, this is nice too. I was like, well, any one of these big colleges will do, you know?
Yes.
But my goal was to go D1 and then go
So
to the league.
So you don't get recruited by LSU. So what does that recruiting process look like for you? You know, obviously you stayed at Tulane, as you mentioned earlier, but what is that process? And, you know, what were the ups and downs that were associated with it that you mentioned, like, dang, like I've worked really hard and the results aren't necessarily showing because these colleges aren't, like, you know, lining up to sign me. What was that mindset? And then what ultimately made you decide to go to Tulane?
I think at some point, and no matter what you do, you always got to pay your dues, and you got to earn that. That, you know, when you don't earn it and it's given to you, people mistreat it, and then also they don't appreciate it. So I think I had to pay my dues in that aspect. As a freshman, was obviously talented enough to be a starter on the varsity team, but they had me at fullback. I was playing Tyler Cluck.
Yeah. No wonder I like you. I actually did not know that about you.
Yeah, so it was so funny, man. I played the freshman on the freshman team, and you know, we killed everybody or whatever. And they moved me up, but they put me at fullback. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, why they got me at fullback? But at the same time, we were running like the wing T.
Yeah, the butt sniff off.
And then the next year, we switched over to the pro style set, but they still had me at fullback. And the guy who was playing tailback was a senior, and dude was like 5'6". I'm not gonna lie, like a little 5'6", little short guy, was not very fat, but he was a senior, so he had to get his time. And even with that, I didn't really throw a bunch of fits or complain about it. I was like, you know what, I'm gonna pay my dues. I'm a block. I was involved in the screen game. I'm gonna just, whenever my opportunity presents itself, then I'll be prepared for it. And I think that actually helped me because I've never been afraid to block, whether it be pass protection or even running the ball. And playing fullback is kind of what introduced me to that, because my brother was a linebacker. I had to go against him in practice, and he wasn't no joke.
So what were you? You're a fullback, and you're tall. Like, if anybody that's ever seen you in person, right? Like, you're a tall running back, especially in the NFL. What was your physical build like? You know, your freshman sophomore year. Were you long and lanky, or were you thick? I mean, because obviously we talked earlier off air, but apparently they were recording it. I mean, you got some booty on you. So, like,
we sitting there, grown ass man talking about your booty, man. Come on, dog.
Pause. And then, but no, I've always been that way, and I've been kind of just a bigger lower body guy. And even in high school, I think I came in at around like 5'11", like 175, 180, like that. So I was good size at that point. And so I think that was kind of the reason why they wanted me to be in at fullback, because I was bigger than the other guys. But then it is hard. Like, it taught me to get my pad level low, because you running. You know, I'm 6'2". You know, you running up all high, you're gonna get hit under the chin and the throat. You'll get knocked out. You know, doing that. So it taught quick to get your pad level low and how leverage works when you're either blocking, even running the ball too, when you're running. So that taught me a lot. But for your other question about the whole recruiting process, you know, it was a little frustrating at one point, because like I was saying, like, you put the work in and you're like, all right, where's the offers? Where's the success? You know, I'm getting 1,000 yards. I'm all state. I'm honorable mention all state. I'm all district and all these other accolades and stuff. Okay, where's that at? And when they weren't coming in, it just, you know, it can confuse you at a young age if you don't understand the whole recruiting process is never, you know, foolproof. Yeah. And so I was sending tapes out and stuff. I even sent a tape out my senior year, like right after the season, like after each game, I would kind of send them out, because I didn't have anybody like sending them out. And Virginia Tech sent the note back and was like, "Wow, dude, we wish we'd have known about you, because we saw your tape, but we already gave all our scholarships out." It was funny just that they wrote back, and I was like, well, appreciate them writing back, so I know I'm not crazy.
Yeah.
You need that little validation.
I think that whole process was for God to show me that it didn't matter how big the school was. It was about you, the athlete, the person, that if you put your work in, it don't matter where you go, you know, you're going to use it as a stepping stone to get where you need to be.
Right.
And so in turn, I had one scholarship offer that was to Tulane, and that's where I ended up going.
And although, it's crazy to see what you did at Tulane, because the career you had there, the records that you set, is Tulane, to most is a smaller school, but the platform that, God allowed you to put that school on through that time. And, obviously, with your teammates and not discrediting those guys, but, it doesn't matter the platform as long as you've got a bigger purpose, right? And there's something beyond yourself, you can do something more with what it is. So you go to Tulane, and I want you to talk us through that experience there, and specifically 2005, because that's something that's totally unique, really to anybody in the country except for your team there at Tulane, right? And what you guys went through at Hurricane Katrina. But talk us through, your first 2 years there, and then going through that.
I think. So first year getting there, it was funny that I went to Tulane, because if you asked me, where you want to go, I was naming all the big schools and stuff, and it wasn't even a second thought, because my dad had already played there, and then I kind of appreciated it later. I was like, well, I got to play in the footsteps of my dad, so that even meant more. But if you asked me, I was like, I ain't going to Tulane. I was always picking other schools, but then freshman year, get there. I didn't redshirt, and there was a guy who was a junior, so we were splitting time, and he had waited to play behind Weldy Moore, who was, I think at that time, he got drafted by Minnesota, and he played for Minnesota and for Pittsburgh for about, I think he played a good career, like 9 years. And so I'm splitting time with this guy, his name's Javon Jackson, and then he gets hurt, and then I had the last 3 games to start, and I was like, I get to start the full game. I'm not splitting time, like splitting carries. And the first game against Army, I go for 280 all-purpose yards. And I was like, okay, I think I can do this now. I think I can do this. And so that happened. So I come back my sophomore year, and I'm like, oh, this is going to be a breeze. I already did this, broke records my freshman year. Sophomore is going to be easy. Hurricane Katrina hits. And, man, it's like the toughest living situation, and just moving around, worried about your own parents, because we got a lot of guys from Louisiana on the team, not knowing or being able to contact, you get in contact with your parents to see if they were okay. But we ended up, and this is, the story is crazy. We ended up leaving New Orleans the day before the storm hit, because the football teams always last to leave for some reason, because it was over.
Gotta get that practice in.
We had camp, we had games coming up. So they canceled Southern Miss, that game that we were going to play, and we head to Jackson, Mississippi. So we stopped at Jackson State. We go into this basketball gym, and they got little mattresses, little twin mattresses on the gym floor.
Oh my God.
So that's where we're staying, and everybody's like, man, there's no hotel or something. We stay at Jackson State. We had to just stop, and we stayed there. There wasn't any hotel. Everything shut down, all kind of stuff. We're staying on little mattresses on the floor. But Hurricane Katrina hits, and it turns towards Jackson, Mississippi. So we actually weathered the storm in the gym of Jackson State. They have no students on campus, nothing. They all evacuated before, but we ended up stopping there. So we stay there, and everything's it was kind of the end of the storm, but it was still bad. So there was, at one point, no lights in the gym, no running water. So you got a bunch of college dudes, like football teams, with no showers, been on mattresses in buses for days. So we got stuck there for a couple of days, and then we ended up going to Dallas. And the Cowboys actually donated a bunch of gear to us, some clothes, some cleats, and different stuff, because we had nothing. Like, they told us to pack for 1 week, and we'll be back. And that's all we had. So we go there, and we're staying at the DoubleTree. So we thought that was the greatest thing ever. We go from Jackson State's gym floor to the DoubleTree in Dallas. Like, oh, this is the best thing ever. And so we stayed there and practiced for a little while, but it came time. It's like, we got to enroll in school. And they found that we would be enrolling in Louisiana Tech. So we started, everybody enrolled in school there. And Louisiana Tech had a condemned dorm that they were going to knock down. And they cut the chains off the building and opened it up so that we could stay there.
Oh.
And
by the way, Ruston, Louisiana is one of the roughest
God's paradise
I've ever been to. I spent 2 Thanksgivings in Ruston, Louisiana, and it was awful.
Ruston has on the side of the interstate a sign that says, attractions. And there's nothing underneath it. I was like, why even have the sign? Like, there's no attractions.
They're still thinking. What are we gonna put here?
It will come one day.
So take us outside of football here. You know, a lot of families in Louisiana. Your family is down there. What's the mindset of like, how is our family? How is our home? I mean, how's everybody doing? So how can you focus on football when this is real life? This is much more important than a game.
Yeah, it was tough, man. Like, most of the guys that were there, they couldn't care less about, you know, what game was coming up or football and stuff, because they were just trying to figure out, okay, are my parents all right? Is the house totally destroyed? Are they going to be able to move back into the house? My parents, we had I think like maybe a foot of water, which Slidell is higher elevation than New Orleans, so we were lucky in that aspect. But everybody was locked out. So you got mold and all kind of other stuff. So they basically had to tear everything up anyway. You know, in New Orleans, they got 12 and 14 feet of water, which was crazy. Yeah. And so some of the guys on the team, like, their childhood homes that they grew up in were demolished. Like, they never got to go back. And you know, still to this day is not even a neighborhood anymore. So, you know, Katrina was tough in that aspect, but it really, as a team, made us kind of draw closer together. Like, so many guys that were from my class or the year behind me or the year ahead of me, like, we still talk today because we all went through that one thing of Hurricane Katrina, and we stayed we had to come together because we became brothers in that moment, because all we had was each other, you know.
And that speaks something to even more than that, the journey of having gone through a process with your guys, even your teammates or whomever. And I can remember, you know, playing on football teams where you had to go through some things, some really tough moments. And those guys, because you went through those moments, there's an everlasting relationship. You're going to have that relationship for forever based off of that, man. But go back. I want you to think back to when this all happens with Katrina. What's the next step? What ends up happening? I know you guys go to La Tech. What happens from that point on?
Yeah, we practiced there, and we would practice whenever they weren't practicing. So sometimes we had night practices, and the tough thing about that was, like, when you get out of practice, you know, you got college football team, everybody's hungry. Everything closes at like 8 o'clock there. Yep. Wow. So you're like, there's like kind of rush to like a Subway before they close to try to get a sandwich or something. So it was rough in that aspect. Some of the things, like, I can call any of these guys up and they'll tell you so many stories. Like, our locker room was a room full of like fold up chairs, and you had your travel bag in front of you. So you're talking about not the cleanest place, right? Guys were getting staph infections. Man. It was like so many guys. I was scared that I get a staph infection. Yeah. I was like, man, I don't even want to sit down on this chair to get dressed. But
sounds like every NFL locker room. Well, I'm not sitting on this toilet.
I was say your locker room setup's not too different than my Division II locker room setup.
See, the locker room's the same, just the cleaning service is different.
Yeah, that's right. All right, so that entire season you played all away games.
All away games, yeah.
Okay, so what was that like? I mean, not to have that home field advantage an entire season. And what did you guys end up going your record?
We went 2-9 that year, so that was a very tough year. Yeah, and every game was an away game. So, you know, even if you play at a neutral, like a first game we played was against Mississippi State, and we played them really close, and I think we lost by like a point or two at the end. But even a neutral site, even in it being in Louisiana, it's still not a home game. You know what I mean? So it was difficult, but it did teach us a lot. Like, throughout the season, it even taught us, like, you know, who's going to be ride or die during the season, and even in the off season. Like, a lot of guys ended up transferring after that because it was their, you know, freshman year, and they're like, well, I didn't come here for this. Yeah. And then there's some guys who stayed. And so it really taught us a lot about sticking together, even during the end of the year. You know, okay, we're not bowl eligible. We're still going to go out here and play. You know, you're on scholarship. And, you know, there's some leaders emerge when you get into situations like that. Because some people just start thinking, why me? Oh, why me? Like that. But I was thinking, okay, what do we do now? Where do we go from here? How do we get solidify some leaders on this team that's going to bring everybody up. And that's what happened. It separated, some of the weak ones from the stronger guys. And so now we know who our core team is, and we were able to build off of that and going forward.
So quickly walk us through the rest of your career. And as I mentioned, you set all kinds of rushing records there, Tulane, but walk us through those next couple of years, and then as you approach the draft and achieving that dream of playing in the NFL that you'd wanted to do, like you said, since you were 3 or 4 years old. Like that was your goal. So talk us through those next couple of years.
Yeah, the next year, so we get back to the off season, and the next year was my junior year. So I'm thinking to myself, all right, I got to make something happen so I can get noticed by the scouts. And balling out. We got 3 games left, and this was the fourth to last game. We're playing against Marshall in West Virginia, and I'm at 900 and something yards, so I know I'm gonna get 1,000 yards this year. And before that, because Katrina and we were splitting time with the guy who was a senior and a junior, so we both ran for over like 600 yards, but I never had 1,000 yards yet. So this is my junior year. Like, all right, I'm gonna get 1,000 yards, and I'm really close. And then like the first half, I had like 90 yards rushing, had like 80 receiving, and an interception gets thrown in the second half, and I go make the tackle, and I tear my PCL and my meniscus. So I'm out for the rest of the season right there. So I'm thinking again, like, man, I've been putting in the work, and the success is not even coming off of it. Even in the game, category, the win-loss category, it wasn't, I wasn't showing up. And so I'm thinking to myself, okay, what am I going to do now? So I just train hard. I get my surgery and, rehab that. And then it's my senior year. So I'm like, I got to make something really happen so that I get noticed by the scouts. I ended up breaking the record with 2,127 rushing yards for a Tulane running back. That'll put you on the map right there. So, that puts me on the map as a senior. And then even then, there's still obstacles because I didn't really get invited to the Senior Bowl till like the last minute, and my agent had to like politic to get me in. And also the combine, same thing. So I got lucky to get in there, and I was like, when I get there, I got to show out. So I go to the Senior Bowl, and I get Senior Bowl MVP. So that puts me a little bit, higher on the map. I go to the combine. They all the draft scout, websites say he's not the fastest. Good size, good hands, this and that. Can run the ball, good vision. He's not the fastest. I ended up running the 3rd fastest time, and we had a lot of running backs. You're talking about Darren McFadden, Felix Jones, Rashard Mendenhall, Chris Johnson.
That was a crazy class.
Ray Rice, Jamal Charles. This is all in the same class. So all of those running backs are there, but I ended up running a fast time, ran 4.43 or 4.42, something like that.
That's weird. That's the same time you said, Darren.
I was gonna say, Darren claims he was a little faster than that. So who's lying here?
I was riding back there.
Well, I'm gonna tell all my grandkids I ran like a 4.1.
Absolutely.
That's Darren's story.
I tell them all the time, Matt. I say, look, man, they had to bring out some fire extinguishers when I was running. They had to bring them out.
Hey, Unc Woodson was up there with a hand watch and got him at 4.29. So he's telling everybody that he ran a 4.29.
At least with you had the laser time, the official. Darren, they're over there.
See, I had the laser time, but we ran 42 yards.
Uphill. See, uphill. And it was outdoor in Indianapolis. They didn't have the arena.
Open the door.
But they counted their seconds like this though when Darren. This is how they timed everybody.
Hey, like the basketball.
They can't see you moving your arms.
There's a video.
Oh, man.
Funny.
All right, so you showed out at the combine. Now you're going in the draft process. Talk us through the anxiety that comes with that. And okay, hey, what's my future look like? I've worked really hard. I've overcame some obstacles. I mean, some massive obstacles, with the injury, with Hurricane Katrina. But now you're approaching it. What was that mentality like? And then talk us through the day of what that was actually like.
Yeah, I had, it was definitely some anxiety and being anxious about it because, there's so many times where I can go back in my career and in life and I'm like, all right, I put in a lot of work, but okay, it doesn't always equate to the success part. And so at this point, I think the difference was I kind of stopped being anxious about it once the draft started, and I was like, you know what, it ain't up to me. Like I've done literally every step that I could do to better my chances in every single way. And if I get picked, I get picked. If not, maybe I'll be a free agent. Then I could continue to work, from there. And so the first day back in '08 was first and second round, and my draft grade was second or third round pick. So I didn't know if I was going first day or not. And so I was like, yeah, I told my parents, like, we're not doing a draft party, nothing like that. I want to be that guy who has the party. And it's like,
well, this is awkward.
Yeah, that was the last pick.
Well, if you guys could put those same suits on tomorrow and come back.
You guys come tomorrow. They're still doing the draft.
Crawfish will be good tomorrow, I swear.
No, so I'm sitting there, and the first round goes by, and I see a lot of running backs come off the board. So at one point, I'm like, man, they picking all these guys ahead of me. But at the same time, I'm like, that's good because all of those guys are taken. Maybe somebody else is scrambling to get a running back or something in the second round. So second round rolls around, and I see that the Saints take Tracy Porter. And I was thinking, because I did a workout for them, I was like, man, the Saints need a running back because Deuce McAllister was in his last year or something like that. And I was like, maybe I could come in and, hit the ground running right there. And but they took a cornerback, and then I think Detroit took a Detroit took a lineman, and then the Bears came up, and I hadn't had no contact with them besides speaking to one scout, Chris Ballard.
Kansas City now, right?
Yeah, no, he came from Kansas City, went to Indy. He's their GM now.
That's right.
Yeah. So I had one conversation with him, but that was it. And then my phone starts ringing. I'm like, it was just surreal. Like, is this really happening? And then I answer the phone, and I hear Lovie Smith on there with that iconic voice. You ready to become a Bear, big guy? And when he said that, I was just like, my parents were hugging me, and my brother was excited, and I had a bunch of high school teammates there and stuff, college teammates, and it was just a great time, great moment. I don't know what Lovie said after that, but I was just like, I know I'm going to be a Chicago Bear. So that was a great moment.
I got to stop him there, man, because Lovie Smith coached me, was my position coach at Arizona State, and absolutely changed my life, man. I mean, I didn't have a father figure growing up. So Lovie, Coach, I can't even call him Lovie. I got to call him Coach Smith.
I know.
Coach Smith was the guy who forced me to go to class, forced me to get up and speak in front of folks. He made me uncomfortable all the damn time. But just, I mean, for you to tell that story, man, brings tears to my eyes, because he changed your life. He made that call and spoke to you on the phone and made that decision, man. So it's good to hear that. That's coming from a good
but
man.
not only that, like him as a coach. Yeah. Like for me to be introduced to the NFL with a coach like that, that's life changing too, because not every coach is like how he is. He treats you like a man, and like you said, he pushes that uncomfortable button on you. A lot of guys seek comfort. A lot of people just seek comfort in general. And he wants to push you into that uncomfort, where you're uncomfortable, because you grow there. That's the main place you're gonna grow. And so same thing, speaking in front of the team, and like he's like, yeah, you may be a good player, but you gotta be a leader. You gotta do this, do that. And so I appreciate Lovie and the definitely the coaching, and also just the leadership that he presented as a coach for us.
Yeah, and it's funny. My daughter actually asked me this last night. Funny that you say this. We were just talking about. She asked me like what my favorite college teams were, and I said, Fresno State, of course. And and then I've kind of somewhat adopted OU just because of proximity here, and I got a good buddy who's a friend of is a big fan of the Sooners, and then she asked, well, what other college teams do you like? And I was like, I don't know. I haven't really thought about that. I mean, I respect Clemson. And she goes, well, why? And she's like, well, I think what the coach there stands for, and what those players represent, like I really, really look at that. And she says, well, what does that mean? And I said, Dabo Swinney is one of those guys that coaches with faith, right? And faith is at the front, and you can hear it from his players as they when you watch them and when they speak. And she asked me, she goes, did you ever have any coaches like that? And I'm like, I only had one, really. I think Lovie was probably the only one that I could compare to that type of personality. So it's funny. Literally last night we were talking about that. But I mean, when you talk about treating the team like men, right? I've never had a coach like Lovey in that. Look, and his big thing was, I'm gonna treat you fair, but I'm not gonna treat you equal. That's and right. He used me as an example one time, and he goes, Brian Urlacher, like, I mean, I'm going to treat you all like men, but I'm not going to treat Urlacher the same as I treat Tyler Klutz. And I'm like, second week with the Bears. And I'm like, dang, man.
Like, so in other words, if we run the ISO play, just get out of the way.
Yeah, don't touch Urlacher. But Tyler, if that rookie linebacker, you better go heads with him because you're going to learn.
Okay, so I do it. So you become a Bear, Chicago Bear. And I can remember, and I know we've all sort of been in this situation. You walk in the doors in that locker room. What are you thinking? Is your mindset going, hey, I got to figure out a way to fit in? I'm looking at the depth chart, or is the dog in you just showing up? Is that dog just saying, hey, listen, I'm going to compete. I'm going to make this team?
Yeah, I mean, immediate dog showed up for me because everybody else was just a number. I didn't care what they looked like, who they were, nothing like that. So it was funny, like you say, when you first walk in, we couldn't fit in anyway because when you were a rookie back then, the old facility, they put you in the basement. Mm-hmm. You're not even in the locker room with everybody else. You have to make the team to get in the locker room, which I appreciate that too. You had to go through that, and it's just us and all the rookies in the basement. And if you even come in there you got to go in the locker room a little bit to get to the equipment room. So say you need some socks or something. As soon as you come in there,
Olin Kreutz.
What the hell you doing
Olin Kreutz.
Get out of here.
Yeah, talk about
everybody was scared.
Yeah, talk about Olin Kreutz and the impact that he had on that team. So the longtime center of the Bears. And I missed him by a year, but he was one of those guys that like his legend lived on in that locker room.
Yeah, he was the ultimate, not that he hazed guys or something like that. It's just like, you got to respect the veterans. Like, you got to pay your dues. You got to respect the veterans, and you got to get in line where you're supposed to be at. And I mean, even just the locker room, to go in there to get like something from an essential need from the equipment room. It makes you not even want to go in there because it's like
I could do okay without an ear pad today. I'm good.
Yeah, I don't need a chin strap today. It's all right.
Okay,
one of those type of deals.
So all right, so you go to Chicago and you grew up in Louisiana. You stayed close in Tulane. Now this is your first time going away from home, right? And obviously that year with Katrina, you were relocated quite a bit. But talk us through what being alone, having some money in your pocket, and being in Chicago. I mean, the Bears are celebrities. I mean, and you're that second round pick. You're going to be the guy, the franchise is going to build around going forward. What was that first couple of years like in that adjustment to, okay, now I got to be a professional, but now I've got some freedom. How do I handle that?
Yeah, I took it as a profession since day one. When I came into rookie minicamp, I was the only one, and Lovey would talk about it all the time. I came in a suit, and everybody else had like jogging pants and all kind of stupid stuff on. In the first team meeting, I was in a suit, and they were like, "Did I miss something?" And I was just adamant about it. Like, this is my first day as a professional. Like, this is my job, even though it's athletics. I wanted to, be presentable that way. So I went in like that, and I treated it like that since day one. So when you talk about being a starter, especially being Chicago, like they love the Bears. You're the second round pick. Unfortunately, Cedric Benson had gotten cut at that point, and so now I'm named. Like basically, they're telling me you're going to be the starter, but you got to show it too. So throughout OTAs and training camp and all that stuff, like I wasn't out there just running around like, I got the starting job. I really wanted to go out there and earn it. So, I basically kind of took all the reps, just so that I would know, like, the coach would even ask me, he's like, you sure you don't want to go, you don't want a break or whatever? I wanted to do all the reps because I wanted to make sure I know what I'm doing, but also to pay my dues in the fact that I wasn't just given this job, just because someone else got relieved of their duties. And so, came in and I think that helped prepare me, even going against the number one defense, with going against, playing scout team and going against the number one defense with, Urlacher, Briggs, Tommy Harris, like Peanut Tillman, like all these Pro Bowl guys, and going against them, they helped me to learn how to run in the NFL. And it's so much different than the college game. And, you got to get your pads low all the time. You can't forget one day because they're gonna catch you even if you slip up once.
What was your biggest adjustment? I mean, you came in from Tulane. Yeah. What's the big? I know we all get this question all the time, but it amazes me how this question is. How we answer this question differently. What was your biggest adjustment going from college to the NFL?
I think my biggest adjustment was recovery and mental. The speed of the game, like everybody talks about that, that's an adjustment for everybody. But some people catch on slower, some people catch on faster. Like for me, you're running back, I got vision, I got patience. So the speed of the game, after a couple practices, a couple games, like you'll get it like that. And that's always an adjustment. But the mentality of everything has to be perfect. Like there's no room for error. Like, the cliche saying of it's a game of inches really comes to life in the NFL because there's been Super Bowls lost by a yard or half a yard. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that mentality of everything counts 100%. Like even if you're tired, get out of the game because we can't have you going half because you're tired. We'd rather have somebody full speed who's half, maybe, 3/4 of the talent, Right. So that mentality, the mental preparation of it, film and really studying your opponent, knowing defenses more because I was a smart guy. I knew defenses. I knew the offense, like, the playbook was easy to understand. But then you get to the NFL, defenses are way more complicated, Didn't play against a lot of 3-4 defenses in college. You get to the NFL, you're like, wait, so who do I got to block? He's a DN, but he's a linebacker?
Yeah. Wait, hold on. Why is my mic count starting out over the slot receiver right now?
Yeah, exactly. And learning like the blitz protection and stuff too, because I always have strived to be an every down running back. And some guys come in on third down, some guys play just first or second down, that type of stuff. So I never wanted to come off the field. So you got to know, if you're getting a quarterback hit, you're not going to play at all. If you're getting a quarterback hit and you fumble, you're not going to play. And that was an adjustment for me, is to know what the defense is doing and base where I'm going to go or how I'm going to do a route or run a route. Like it was so much mental stuff that I had to get under my belt to be at a certain level to play in the NFL. But the recovery part too, like in college, I would just, play a game, have 38 carries, and then I'd be, on campus running around playing basketball or something. Yeah. Like it was crazy. You can't do that in the NFL, man. Them hits add up.
What was that point in the NFL that you're like, okay, I can do this and I can be really good at it? Like what was that? Was it game 2? Was it, year 2? What was the point where you're like, okay, I can be an elite running back in this league?
I think it was game 1. It came to me. And normally, everybody may not be able to say that, but we played the Indianapolis Colts. It was the rematch of 2006 when they beat the Bears in the Super Bowl. Their opening stadium, Lucas Oil Stadium, first game in there, playing against Peyton. And, he's a Louisiana guy, so I was like, we got to beat him. I want to have a bragging right in that aspect. But that game, mentally was prepared for the game, watched film, and I got to see the whole process of a game week, through the NFL eyes, and then was able to go out there and display that, rush for over 100 yards and stuff and had a touchdown. And when I ran, I had a 50-yard touchdown like right before halftime, and it was a trap play. Roberto Garza comes across and like cuts a linebacker, and it was me and the safety. And I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, if I make him miss, there's nobody there left. So I got to score. So I made a cut, made a miss. I run like 50 yards, score a touchdown. And then I get to the sideline. Pat Manley, who's the deep snapper, who played for like 50 years for them, he comes up to me. He was like, wow, we got one. We got a good one.
You're going to be okay.
Because he had been there so long. He was like, man, like we got a good running back now or whatever. And he was just like, I was like, what are you talking about? But he was just saying like I hadn't seen that in a while, some explosive runs or something like that. And that's when I was kind of like, man, I think I could do this after that first game.
All right.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just, these guys are getting tired of hearing me ask this question, but I'm just so fascinated by the achievement of goals. And so I'm curious for you, did the reality of making it and playing, did it live up to what you had always dreamed it would be to play in the NFL?
Man, it exceeded above and beyond that, man. At 7 years old, after my first practice, I didn't tell y'all, I'm riding home in the car with my dad, and I told him, I said, I'm gonna be an NFL player. And he was like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, son, you were just on your back. So.
Yeah, you were just crying because you got hit.
Like, you're just crying. Now you're gonna be NFL. All right, dude. Typical 7-year-old.
Yeah.
But I could have never fathomed that it would be how it was. Like the friendships made, the brotherhood of that part, but also like it challenged me being in the NFL, like to the core, like to be an NFL running back and then to play at a certain level and to try to sustain that for year after year after year. Because, you know, you play running back, you have a 1,000-yard season. They're like, okay, cool. Can you do it next year?
Mm-hmm.
And then say you don't do it next year. Always falling off.
Yeah.
You're getting beat up, getting old. So, like, to stay at a certain level and continue to stack those seasons really challenged me, like, to the most. And that goes for off season. Then, you know, growing in life, you know, meeting my wife here, having kids and a family, and having to, you know, you're on the field thinking about them. You're like, I'm providing for a family now.
Yeah.
So it was way above my expectations.
That's awesome.
So you go through, you play in Chicago. You signed a long-term contract going into the 2012 season. You played a few more years there, and I don't want to breeze over your NFL career because, you know, I think there's a lot that needs to be talked about, but we'll have you back on. But so you go through that, and then the end of your contract, you know, I'm sure you spent that much time in Chicago. You're like, I want to finish my career here, right? I want to retire a Bear. But you know, God had a different plan for you, and He wanted to send you. Talk us through that next step, and you know, in your time in New York.
Yeah, this is cognizant of just what we've been talking about the whole podcast. Like you could even put the work in. You don't always get what you may think you deserve, or you know, the end goal that you have set out to get, even though the work may have been put in. And you know, playing for the Bears and having those 8 seasons and you know, really being a force for the offense and all that stuff. I'm like, yeah, you know, I would definitely want to finish my career out here in Chicago and ride off into the sunset and all that, but you know, it ended up not happening that way. And at the same time, you know, you feel, because you're like, man, I even, you know, for the Bears, you know, I played injured, you know, where I probably shouldn't have been out in the field. Right. I'm like, I'm gonna be out here, and I'm you know, doing this for the team and all that stuff. And it's hard to separate that business part and the team part. But when it came 2015 and I finished my season there and my contract was up, I didn't really hold on to any bad feelings or any of that stuff like that, or animosity, because that's just how life is sometimes. You know, maybe it wasn't in the cards for me to stay in Chicago and play another couple years. And so, you know, you got to take things as they come. You know, as I gotten older, I've come to realize that we are in very little control of our lives, if any at all. You know, we're quarantined right now. So,
yeah, right.
you know, so, you take a look back a couple months ago with Kobe Bryant. You know, nobody could have imagined some tragedy like that happening. But then also on the heels of this being, you know, everybody with the coronavirus and all that stuff. So I'm not in control. So I can't really try to control everything around me. You know, you can control your actions, your character, like these type of things. But other than that, you have to, you know, roll with the punches, so to speak. So when that happened, I appreciated the Bears for giving, you know, a little kid from Tulane and from Slidell a chance, and it working out. But then also, you know, when it's time to move on, you gotta go somewhere else. And
so no middle finger, nothing like you didn't walk out, get your stuff. Come on, Matt, just give it to us. Tell us. You didn't kick somebody on the way out, no?
So I did a lot of kicking and screaming when it came contract time because I was trying to secure the rest of my family's future and I was being treated a certain way. But when it came at the end, people you want to do something like that, it's like, yeah, who's that going to benefit?
Right.
Me giving somebody the middle finger or whatever. It's like, I'm better than that,
Yeah.
So
it's interesting.
I didn't want to do that.
It's interesting because this is the third or fourth scenario where it didn't quite work out the way that you thought, but you seem to be a forward-thinking person, and that you don't seem to be dwelling on these scenarios that you can't do anything about. Where does that clarity come from? I mean, is that always something you've had? Because that's a hard mindset and thing to accept, that I can't control it. I'm going to keep looking forward and do what I can control.
I think God has created me like the way He's created me, and then also with my parents to be just a humble guy. And you have to be humble in order to accept certain things and work for the result that you want. Because like you're saying, this is like the third time we have brought that up, but I think that clarity of forward thinking is just looking at the bigger picture. When you look at the bigger picture, that's when you get it. If I were to just focus on football and just that, then I'd explode. Being that things don't go your way. But what I'm looking at it is, and it's part of the reason why, and I'm sure Tyler will probably ask this question in a little bit, but of what I do now is because I look at the big picture. Football is not it. That's a 10-year career, which is above and beyond what most average running backs get. And so, if I were to just put everything into that 10-year career as opposed to my entire life, then, I'm shorting myself, my family, and everybody else. And so I never wanted to be the guy who finished his career and they'd be like at the end, oh, he was a decent running back. I want the after to be even more than before.
Love it. And that's perfect segue to it. So thanks for teaming me up, Ben and Matt. But
you're welcome.
One of the things that I respected about you and your exit from the game and as you started that transition, and I'll call it civilian life, but is you were so close to a milestone of NFL running backs, right? And so close, and you were still playing very, very effective football as a 3-down back in the NFL for the Jets. But there came a point where you decided, okay, this is probably it for me because my purpose is bigger than just a game, right?
Yeah.
The game created a platform for you, and I want you to start talking about that. But shine some light for us on that decision that you and Danielle made about, okay, this is it for us. We've done the things that we felt like we were called to do in this phase. Now it's time to move on to the next one. And then maybe just that, like, I wish I could have gotten that 10K, but I mean, shine some light on that for us.
Yeah, it's nice to look at. If you have 9,800 and then you have the 10,000 number, you'd obviously look at that 10 like, that extra digit looks nice on there. But when it came to me in my career, when I finished my second year with the Jets, that end of that year, I played about 5 games of just constantly every week got to get my knee drained. And I'm just this huge needle draining your knee every week and stuff. And I'm like, all right, I'm starting to wear down as a running back finally. And I'm like, after the end of the season, I'm going to get some work done on this knee. And when it comes time for, it being rehabbed and done, let me see if it's back. Because I want to, if I'm going to play, I want to continue to play at a high level. I don't want to be a guy out there who, you remember him getting like knocked out on the field and that ends his career or something, And so I weighed the pros and cons of both. Okay, you say you play, there's a risk of more and maybe even more severe injury, but you get the 10K. Okay, then I weighed the aspect of you get to walk away from the game on your own terms, and your family doesn't have to worry about you every day or what from the other aspect. So I weighed that option, and I was going back and forth for a while on it because I did feel like I still had some left in the tank, but also I was just tired, man. I was like, man, I'm just tired of being stuck with needles, tired of meetings, tired of rehab, tired of all kind of stuff. And I was like, you know what? I think it's a good time for me to step away from the game. And also, I came to the realization that a milestone of the NFL standards does not define me as a person and as a player as well. You know, maybe I didn't make 10,000 yards by, 200 yards or whatever, but does that really make a difference of who I was on the field or, whatnot? So that was my whole decision making, is that I can still have a purpose and use the NFL's platform to do some good in people's life. And that means more to me than to go out there and be limping around on the field for another year or two.
You know what's cool to hear you say that perspective. A lot of times when we fail something, we justify by saying, "Oh, just it wasn't meant to be" or whatever. But it's cool to hear you say, even from a successful standpoint, you still walked away early because you knew it didn't define you. So that's really cool that you had that mindset. Because again, it's easy to say that when you fail something. That's right. It's much tougher to have that mindset when you're really, really good at something. So that's really cool that you say that.
Yeah.
You know what I think? I think a lot of guys in the NFL too, like their biggest fear is becoming a regular person.
Absolutely.
But it's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Like you gotta, you get so much praise and while you're playing and you're young and you're getting, you're on TV every Sunday and you get all this praise and fame and all this stuff, but that wears off. No matter how famous you're, like, you can think about quarterbacks or running backs who were at the top of their game, 5 years ago, and it's like, wait, who's that guy? Yeah. Oh, he did play ball. Because when you're gone, when you're done, none of that really is going to matter that much. Yeah. There'll be some people that really appreciate it or they're a big fan of you and that type of stuff, but their biggest fear, I think, is I don't want to be a regular person. But newsflash, we're all regular people.
Yeah,
we're all regular people.
Yeah. Darren's living
different than somebody else.
Sorry, it's like Darren's living that harsh reality right now. Nobody cares about him anymore.
They ain't giving me free dinners anymore.
Hey, yeah. What you mean? You can read a lease? I
don't care. Hey, man, I did have something, man. I needed this to get off my chest, though. I remember when your time was up in Chicago, and I was at ESPN working as an analyst. And I could not believe that you left, that time of your career in Chicago ended. Like I couldn't, when the news broke that you were signing with the Jets, it just didn't feel right. And I'm just being real on my side because I've watched you play. I know you were not only a great running back, caught the ball out of the backfield, did all the little things it took to be a 3-down player. And that, to me, the feat of being a 3-down player at the running back position is unheard of today. You just don't see it. Yeah. But then not only that, but then going to the Jets and hearing the news, and then I saw you in the uniform, and I just thought, this does not feel right, man. How many Chicago Bears fans said that to you as well?
Oh, man, so many. Man, it's funny, man, because like even if I post a highlight from like a great play from the Jets, they're like, nice. Looks better than blue and orange.
I wish there was a dislike button on Instagram.
Touchdown. I can't even post a touchdown. They're like, it's okay.
It's good. Yeah.
But it is funny though, because like so many people would like, they're like, I can't even imagine you out of blue and orange.
Right.
Like it just looks weird to me. I don't know. I don't like it. Mm-hmm. And it was definitely a little weird being in it. Like there is just, that happens in everybody's career at some point. I guess you want to continue to play, but you got to do it, away from your first love, your first team. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. So I want to focus a little bit here at the end of this on, what you're doing now and, your purpose beyond the game of football. And we've made mention a couple times is, your performance on the field doesn't define who you are as a man and, who you are as even a player. But, you have taken the platform of the Chicago Bears and, established your home in Chicago. You mentioned Danielle, your wife is from there. But you have really, really done a great job of serving the community of Chicago. Let's talk about, what you've done post football from a service standpoint, because I know that's really important to you and Danielle, and then get into the podcast that you guys have launched, which, if you want to plug that, would love for you, because I think it's a great resource for a lot of people out there.
Yeah, definitely. So while playing, I be watching the news every now and then, and you just hear so much being here in Chicago about the gun violence. And I was like, man, this is so crazy that it's centrally located only in black neighborhoods, that all of these kids, young kids, every time the weather's nice, 50 shootings over the weekend, 45 people shot, and it's like, why is this still going on? And I was like, I got to see for myself, like, why is this problem? There's got to be a root to the fruit of this issue. And I started, reaching out to people who, did stuff foundation-wise on the south and the west side of Chicago. And then I started my own foundation and to be able to combat what was going on, which was basically give educational opportunities to the youth so that they can continue to stay out of the streets, basically, so they can have a way to continue their education and go and do something with their life and don't have to go into the street life. And so, when I started doing that, I used to go down there and play flag football with the kids and do all kind of different stuff. But the main goal was just to have something, a resource to expose them to something that they probably would never get exposed to being in the neighborhood. I mean, you got guys that are, 50 plus years old in Chicago and the south and west side that have never been downtown. They've never left their own block, their own corner. And it's like, why is that the case? It's just the resources aren't provided in there. Like you can literally get on the interstate and go south of the city 10, 15, 20 minutes down past the White Sox Stadium. It looks like a third world country. And it's like you got all of these buildings and high rises and skyscrapers going up every other day, but you go 20 minutes down the road and it's all liquor stores and fried chicken and fish places. So I wanted to do something to help out with that. And now I've even in retirement gotten into a role with an organization called Biblica, and they do a lot of international work. So when I retired, I was like, I do a lot of work in Chicago, but what's a way for me to piggyback on some good work being done internationally? And Biblica does that with basically Bible translation. And it's a whole new world that I was not even aware of, with people being provided with a language that don't have the language or the Bible in their language and different stuff. So it's just another way for me to reach and do some stuff with people. Even now, with the COVID-19 crisis that's going on. Here, there was a stat. There was 119 deaths from COVID in the African American community. The next closest was 19. So why is the disparity so big? And it's because in low-income neighborhoods, they can't order groceries via government assistance. So they have to go to the grocery store. There's food deserts in neighborhoods. So they have to take public transportation to go to the store. So they're at a higher risk of doing these things. And every household is multi-generational. You got grandma living with grandson and all of that. So if he goes to the grocery store and brings it back, everybody's already got underlying health issues, diabetes, all kind of, heart disease, all kind of stuff. So that is the reason why so many people are dying in the African American community from COVID, because they have the lack of access to, good produce and food because of the reason of that. And I've even gotten on with a couple of churches and, through Biblica and stuff. And we've been trying to combat that by being able to donate money so that they can buy gift cards from Instacart and get their groceries ordered and stuff too. So
yeah, that's awesome. And then your foundation is What's Your Forte? See what you did there. A little play on words. Well done. But so now any of those listeners that feel like, okay, hey, I want to learn more or get involved with, helping, the communities in Chicago and Southside Chicago specifically. What's a way that they can get, in touch with, your foundation or groups in Chicago that you work with to help that?
Yeah, I got what'syourfortefoundation.org is the website that we have, and you can read up everything about what we do on there, and also there's a donate link, obviously. But then most recently with what's going on right now, there's a website for chicagodelivers.org, and that'll tell you the whole thing of what I just basically the whole spiel of why these deaths are coming in low income neighborhoods, and this isn't just Chicago located, like. There's low-income neighborhoods countrywide, so this isn't just here, So, it's a tough reality, but if we, don't put a hand in, then who else is going to do it? But
that's awesome, man. I love that.
Oh yeah, the True versus Truth is
podcast. Let's hear about that.
Yeah, True versus Truth is the podcast that we have. The name comes from, and today a lot of people have self-defined truth, so. This is what fits my lifestyle, so it's true for me. But we like to take the Bible basically through a biblical lens and kind of go through Scripture and let's talk about it. Let's have an open mind and talk about it. Just because culture says it's cool or we need to do this or it's normal, a cultural norm, that doesn't mean it's good for your soul, or that doesn't mean it's good for you personally too. So we talk about a lot of these issues, whether it be in marriages. Whether it be, raising your kids, fatherhood, all this stuff, or, other things as far as like, self-care, and trying to help yourself out. So that's the reason for the podcast. And there's a lot of wisdom and other guests on there that have a lot of wisdom too.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Last thing that I want to ask you, and then Ben's going to pose a question to you. But one of the professions that you did not mention was acting, and if you could just go ahead,
come on, man.
If you could run through,
they're killing you over here.
The line,
they're killing you over here, man.
If you don't know what we're talking about,
you want me to do a monologue?
If you don't know what we're talking
the
about,
monologue that you did on Chicago Fire, which my wife and I are obsessed with the whole Chicago series. PD, Med, and Fire. We love that, but and we're close with you and Danielle, and I think I saw you post something, but like we were watching it, we forgot that you were on it, and I'm like, no, he's on the human chain helping that kid out of the river.
Did you have a line? Did you talk?
Oh yeah, Chicago Pride.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Chicago
awesome.
Okay, all right, put the face on. Hold on. Get yourself in the zone, and I want to hear the line.
Do a reenactment. What'd you say?
So this is I'm far worse of an actor than a football player. Just
it's true.
To let y'all know.
It's true.
Let y'all know. I don't even remember the line. What is the line? Chicago shows up for?
Yeah, Chicago shows up for each other, something like that.
Hold on, take us back.
The scene goes where one of the guys, the mom, first of all, she was being a bad mother. She fell asleep on the couch, and her son was about to drown in a freezing cold lake. And so we were human chain holding on, and we kind of save him or whatever. And so she comes running out, and she's like, thank you to all the firefighters. And she's like, and the firefighter, he goes, well, don't thank us, ma'am. You need to thank him and her. And he keeps pointing to all the guys and the girls on the human chain. And I go, hey, Chicago shows up for each other.
Yeah.
There it is. There it is.
What's the award? What's the awards for TV show? Give him an Emmy. What is it?
Is it the Emmy? Yeah.
A Grammy.
A Grammy. There you go.
Nah, that's singing, man. That's a singing.
I know. I was joking with the cast. I was like, I'm going to get a Grammy.
Hey, you didn't have your Jets helmet close by. I'm joking.
Yeah, the FDNY.
Just a green NY
shirt on.
Man, here's the thing. What I love about podcasts is it gives you insight on people that you would never have access to. And we just so much appreciate you jumping on here, because I remember watching you play. I didn't know anything about you though, and having this conversation and getting to know the real Matt Forte. I mean, that's awesome. Your story's incredible. So really, really appreciate you going in depth. One question that we like to end every episode with, and if you need a second to think about it, go for it. If you could go back to any point in your life and tell yourself one thing, where would you go and what would you tell yourself?
I would probably go to probably go to high school, maybe my senior year, and I would tell myself that you're enough.
Oh man!
I tell myself you're enough. You don't have to try to fit in from the world standards or other people's views of you, or you don't have to try to fit in so much from what other people do. If you stand out, you can't stand out trying to fit in. So I would tell myself that.
That's the best answer we've gotten to that question.
Great.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. Well, Matt, man, thank you so much. Go have dinner with Danielle and the kiddos, and thank you again for spending some time with us. And as always, man, really appreciate it. And I just want listeners to hear when I say this is, we have a lot of guests on that tell their story, and we're all about being transparent on this, and everything that Matt has said about his journey, I got the chance to see, and his work ethic and his talent, those are all real and undeniable, but the man that he is off of the field is more defining of who he is. And that's the most important thing that I've been blessed with, kind of being around him over the years. And so thank you, Matt, for being the influence that you are to the communities around you, but the community that you've created in the locker rooms that you've been in, man, because you've made lasting impacts on a lot of men. And so keep doing what you're doing, man. I know that God's got really, really great things in store for you in the future, and man, look forward to having you on again.
Yeah, no doubt, man. I appreciate y'all having me on. This is a cool deal you guys are doing with the podcast.
You. Yeah, no,
thanks, brother.
It's great, man. Hey, last thing is for those of you watching on YouTube, next to 17 over there, there's room for either 28 or 44.
Yeah, 28.
Yeah,
I don't know about 44.
Yeah.
I got the 2-9. I got the DeMarco.
Yeah.
I need one from all of y'all.
All right, yeah, for sure, man. All right, man. Well, have a good one, man. Appreciate you.
ACU jersey.
I'll send you a jersey, man.
Yeah, send me one.
Thanks, bro.
All right, brother.
Thanks, Matt.